Consideration, consider. It is 5:30 PM on Tuesday, January the 13th, 2026. I call this workshop and special meeting of the Kingsville Independent School District to order. We will have roll call. Joe Mireles. Here. Brian Kufal. Here. Martin Chapa. Here. David Garcia. Here. Delma Salinas.
Here.
Jacob Perez. Here. and Joseph Reese here. Let the record show that there is a quorum of board members present and that this meeting has been posted in accordance with Government Code Chapter 551, State of Texas Open Meetings Act. We will move to a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance and the Texas flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Moving on to item number 6, public participation. Do we have anyone who wishes to address the board?
Yes, sir, we have Elizabeth Ramos. The topic is law.
Okay. Ms. Ramos.
Making you work? Yeah, I got it. Excuse me, my voice is a little weird today. Good afternoon, Superintendent and Boards of Trustees. I'm here to ask for you to put on a future workshop, laws and procedures when it comes to pretty much freedom of information. There's been several complaints already this year of staff talking to parents and members of the community that they're not allowed to record events, meetings, or being inside of public buildings such as the campuses. So I like to reiterate to you guys the importance of your staff being trained and educated on the allowance of recording and video recordings on your public campuses. I just came also, what was the other issue? But mainly it's the staff not knowing the laws and telling parents they can or cannot do those things. Also, when parents ask for the school district for open records when it comes to instances or getting proof of and asking for video or recordings of those events happening on the school campuses, the majority of the staff, or let me go ahead and say all of the staff, have told these parents and community members that they don't have a right to these videos, which is false. They state because students are in the videos. I can stand on a sidewalk and video kids playing in the park. I'm on a public sidewalk. And the same applies when I'm on a public campus paid for by public funds. I have the right to those videos as well. There is a fine line when it comes to educational records, which most, if not all, the community cannot get a hold of. But if it's just students and staff doing their jobs in the hallways or the classrooms or lunchrooms and gyms and PE or outside or inside, we have the right to that information. So please train your staff in educating the community about the rights that they have when it comes to obtaining information and recording information for their use. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ramos. Do we have anyone else who wishes to address the board?
No, sir.
Okay. We move on to item number 5. Kingsville ISD Board of Trustees will conduct a board workshop to discuss the following. Item 5A, district calendar constraints. Ms. Tanya Williams.
It's this one. No, that one. No part for this one. Okay.
Good evening, Board President, Superintendent Dr. Martinez, and members of the board. The copies that you are currently getting is a copy of our current instructional calendar and a one-pager of some constraints that we would like to take into consideration in developing next year's instructional calendar. And we would like some board guidance as far as what you would like to do in reference to these constraints. So when looking at our instructional calendar, these are the constraints that we will take into consideration. I will be taking them to DEIC tomorrow, so we can start developing these drafts for next school year surrounding these constraints. The first constraint is at minimum, our instructional calendar has to meet or exceed 75,600 instructional minutes to comply with the TEA. Instructional days must align with state assessments. And in order to comply with the additional day school year grant, our instructional calendar must have a minimum of 175 instructional days. Okay, we currently have 167. In reference to start and end dates and our daily schedule, we would like some guidance from the board as well. I gave some examples as far as not starting any earlier than the first week of August, or not ending any later than the last day of May. When it comes to holiday and breaks, for Thanksgiving, looking at two different options. Are we still looking at giving the full week of Thanksgiving, or are we only looking at maybe Wednesday through Friday for another option? When it comes to stock show, currently we have 2 instructional days that we have off. So are we looking at keeping those same 2 days, going down to 1, or not having stock show included within our holidays? For winter break, we must include a minimum of 2 consecutive weeks to be aligned. And so looking at when we are wanting to start and end that winter break as well. And then looking at spring break and trying to align with surrounding districts when possible. So those are some constraints that we are wanting guidance from the board for me to take back to DEIC and for us to develop our draft calendars, taking these constraints into effect.
Can I say something?
Of course.
I appreciate you bringing this to the board as far as getting our input, but I'll be totally honest with you. I think the DEIC should be the lead in this, and I know they probably will be, because they'll be getting, some information from their campuses as far as what type of calendar they would like. So, and I'm pretty sure some of the board members have some comments, but as far as I'm concerned, I would leave it to the DIC, and I know we have to vote on it. And this year, we could try to get it earlier than we did last year.
Yes,
And I know the situation of last year, but if we can do a little earlier, so employees or the teachers will be able to plan like the summer break or whatever they need.
yes, sir.
Ms. Williams, I do have a question, and you should take it back to your committee. And I'm glad you brought this up. When it comes to the stock show days, I know that's something that we've done every year, right? We don't question it. It would be really nice to get some data on like exactly how many students are affected by this. Because everybody benefits from those days, I guess you could say that, but also does it really benefit them? And when we're missing school, there's some hard questions that
Yes, sir.
y'all need to ask each other. Is it really worth it?
Yes, sir. Of course. Any other questions from the board?
So what we're gonna try to do here is, add 18 more days to, we're at 157 now, we need to do 175,
Yeah, we're at 167.
okay. 67,
Yes, sir.
okay.
Yes.
8 days instead,
Yes.
okay.
And the minimum days for ATSE additional day school year is the 175.
So we're looking for 8 days somewhere
Correct.
to make that up, okay.
So how many instructional minutes is it, 167?
A 167 is the 75,000. Yes, ma'am.
I do have another concern, actually, your question. All right, so testing, can you make sure that you guide me along? When is the testing, the state testing over with retakes and all that?
Yes, sir. Makeups, and I have the calendar there on my phone on the desk. But we are done by mid-May.
And our last day of school is going to be on the 22nd, 26th? 21st.
Thank
So you think we'll probably be done around
I can give you the exact date. Thank you, Dr. Welch. We will be completely done with STAR testing and makeups by May 1st.
So, and we all know this as educators and as parents, that that's a long time between that and the last day of school.
Yes, sir.
And I don't know how much money goes on. And we have to be really honest with ourselves. I mean, I hope that can change with, Dr. Martinez and the new team. But it seems to me that those last couple of weeks can really drag on, because from what I hear from some of the students that I know, there's not a lot going on. So I think that needs to be really honestly looked at. Can we end school sooner if we have to? I mean, change the calendar that way. Because I really do think that time is, my own personal opinion, school board members, is that, Mr. Benelli, you may know this from back in the day, also as well as, it's hard to keep a student's attention when you put so much effort on that state test and it's over. How do you grab their attention for the last couple of weeks?
But
So,
some kids are still working on credits and stuff, so it's not over.
Yes, and-
Testing may be over, but the semester, the 6 weeks is not over, so they should be working until the last day.
Yes, and that is what,
To get grades.
Yeah,
And it
so,
just depends when the grades due before graduation. When is the final day for grades to be turned in? Because you gotta turn them in a week early, a week before, the 21st. I mean, when is that deadline? Or that's something you're gonna determine as a.
correct. The marking periods and everything is something that we'll have to look at once we have that instructional calendar and we go through those weeks. And that's where it's all determined once we have that laid out. But yes, ma'am.
Right, so if I may add, that is part of the mindset shift that we have to embrace, right? Our kids are behind, our kids have gaps. If we are saying after the test, there's nothing else for us to teach and it's just a drag, right? We're really not serious about educating students. Because what we should be doing is continuing to teach what students need to learn. And so that's why on the day before the holidays, we made it very clear to everyone, this is not a free day. Because we're going into the holidays, so you get to do movies, or you get to do parties, or you get to do nothing. We have students that have enormous gaps. And if we are saying no instruction after testing, then we're teaching for the sole purpose of the test, and that is not where we are. I have said this before, that my philosophy is we provide high quality instruction from day one till the very last day, and the test results will come as the collateral result of our great teaching. But we are not teaching to the test. We're not teaching for the purpose of the test. The test is something we have to do because it's part of the TA guidance and law. But what we have to shift as educators in the district is to ensure that we are focusing on teaching and learning, not on when is the test or when is the last day. And again, I'm gonna say this, it's a mind shift that we all have to work on changing for the teachers, the administrators, the parents, everyone, right? We are focused on learning. We're not focusing on the test. The test is a byproduct of the learning. Does that make sense?
I like what Jake said. And bringing it to us earlier, that last year it was a last minute vote on what we need to do, why we had to do it. Bringing more than one this year of what we're looking for with this, for example, Thanksgiving, things like that, Christmas break. Bringing that to us where we're not forced to make a decision, a last minute decision.
Yes, sir.
And I think that would be, take a lot of pressure off everybody.
Yes, sir.
And that is precisely.
Okay. That's precisely well, one of the reasons actually why I work with my team to ensure that we presented this to you as early as possible for various reasons. Number one, because of what you said, there's a lot of planning that goes on between now and the first day of instruction. And there are days we have to lock in for training purposes, for vacation, for the different administrators, etc. But it's also important because the grants that we apply for, well, we need to plan for those days accordingly, right? And so we don't want to have to put the horse before the carriage or the carriage before the horse. I always say that backwards. But we ask for your constraints because in my experience, there's some things that sometimes boards will not want to compromise on. Like, for example, in some districts I have worked at, boards absolutely will not entertain the Thanksgiving break to be less than a whole week. And that is a non-negotiable for them. And so we're bringing this for your discussion and consideration so that you can tell us what are your non-negotiables. So when we present this to the DIC, we can say, we want to develop a calendar, but we're not touching this, right? Because these are board constraints that we want to make sure we respect. That way, when you get to vote for the calendar that we present to you, you don't even have to worry about that. That's out of the way. So that's what we're kind of doing it this early to give us time to really have a good product and plan effectively.
I have one more question. The wellness days, will they be affected by the additional days that are going to be in the calendar? Because I know there's wellness days built in this calendar, the current one.
We have 6 wellness days.
Right.
That is correct. We currently have 6 wellness days, one for each month, excluding the months that have a long holiday with those. That would be a conversation that we could also have and get some board opinion on if that is something that we are still wanting to include or if we are not including those days anymore.
I think we can definitely talk about that in closed session.
Yes,
Especially if we're needing to add days.
Yeah.
It would be the
Correct.
perfect place to do it.
Any more questions from the board? Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Moving on to item 5D, Blue Bonnet, RLA K through 5, Ms. Jennifer Flowers and Dr. Hilda Arnold.
Which one was yours? Okay.
Good evening, Board President Reese, Dr. Martinez, and members of the board. Mrs. Flowers and I will be reviewing an overview of the Blue Bonnet Learning Reading Language Arts. Blue Bonnet Learning RLA instructional materials are state-developed open education resources approved by the State Board of Education during the 2024 Instructional Materials Review and Approval, also known as a IMRA cycle. These materials serve as a high-quality instructional option for Texas school systems and are fully aligned to the Texas Essential of Knowledge and Skills. They're also aligned to the RLA research-based instructional strategies. The first one is the foundational skills, which is explicit systematic practice with literacy foundational skills, text complexity, regular practice with grade level complex text and academic language, knowledge coherence, building knowledge and vocabulary through text in all content areas, text-based responses reading, writing, speaking, grounded in evidence from text, both in literacy and informational. Mrs. Flowers will now pass out the component navigation guide. You will be able to see the components at a glance on page 3 and 4, and by grade level starting on page 5. Bluebonnet Learning RLA consists of 2 integrated components. This is the K to 3 foundational skills, the K through 5 reading for knowledge, and together these components ensure that students develop strong early literacy skills. Students build long-term academic success through background knowledge, vocabulary, and comprehension. The K through 3 foundational skills components use research-based literacy practices aligned to the science of reading. Instruction is intentionally sequenced from simple to more complex skills, allowing students to develop fluency and confidence as readers. Key features include explicit instruction in print concepts, phonological and phonemic awareness, phonics and word recognition, decoding and fluency, strong focus on grammar, writing mechanics, language conventions, spelling and vocabulary, opportunities for independent practice and use of decodable text, strong emphasis on handwriting and cursive development, structured lessons designed to support mastery of foundational reading skills. Foundational skills products that are offered are the following: the printed teacher guides, the student activity book consumables, large and small letter cards, printed student readers, printed spelling cards, printed big books, and the supplemental kits. In K through 5, the Reading for Knowledge, Bluebonnet Learning, K through 5 RLA instructional units follow a knowledge-based approach that intentionally connects learning across grade levels. Students engage with rich texts that include literature, history, and science content to strengthen comprehension and critical thinking. The key features include the cross-curricular integration of science and history, exposure to high-quality literature aligned to a classical educational model, daily reading, writing, speaking, and listening opportunities, written responses grounded in text evidence, development of research and analytical skills. Content reflects the diverse people, places, and history of Texas, ensuring relevance for Texas students and alignment with STAR expectations for grade level success. RLA product offerings include the printed teacher guides, the printed image cards, the printed trade book collections, student activity book consumables, printed student readers, access to components digitally, and authentic text collections, and then also the novels for 4th and 5th grades. And now Mrs. Flowers will discuss the knowledge map with subject area focus.
So as Dr. Arnold stated, the Bluebonnet RLA materials do bring in some of that social studies and science content into the RLA. You can see they're color coded here. So the literary subjects are that pink color, our science that tan color, and then social studies is blue. And what we have noticed is on the STAR test, they do sometimes bring in questions that have to do with science and social studies because they're assuming that these students have this foundational base of knowledge, and this is going to help with that. So across the RLA content, we'll see some science and social studies subjects. The Bluebonnet also comes with digital assessments. So all the digital assessment questions for 3 through 5 are going to align with the STAR language and the STAR item types. So we're going to have those short constructed responses and those extended constructed responses. The short constructed responses are usually those students probably no more than 5 sentences to answer those questions is what the students would be expected to do. And then those extended constructed responses would be what we would consider the essay in past tests. The K through 2 digital assessments contain a text-to-speech or audio component for our students. They're going to read the passages and questions. This will allow us to continue to use Eduphoria. Speaking from personal experience, creating tests that are not currently star-aligned and making them star-aligned is a little bit difficult. So having these already done, we can convert them into Eduphoria and still use our current platform in order to assess data and analyze data in that manner. The K through 5 digital assessments are going to include warm read passages, so passages the students have seen before. And they're going to be related to the topics that they've been going over or the genre of the unit. K through 3 foundational skills do not have that digital assessment component, but we would be doing both the K through 3 foundational skills and the K through 5 RLA knowledge. And then each individual question is going to be aligned to one TEAG in particular. As far as family support, Bluebonnet does recognize that parents and families are key partners in student learning. So there are unit level family letters that can go out, letting the parents know what the students are learning, guidance for parents on how to support their students at home, and then clear communication of instructional goals and expectations for their student. And these supports are going to help families stay informed, engaged in their child's literacy development throughout the school year. As far as teacher support, these materials are designed with teachers in mind. So we're going to give them everything that they need so they can focus on how they're teaching and not necessarily what they're teaching. The teacher supports include comprehensive scope and sequence, unit overviews with background knowledge, daily ready-to-use lesson plans, built-in language supports and differentiation strategies, aligned formative and summative assessments. These materials fully cover the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, the TEKS, and the English Language Proficiency Standards, or the ELPS. As far as funding, because I know that's very important, we can use multiple sources to fund these. We get our allotment for each student, and then if we're going with an OER, an open education resource, we get an extra $20 per student. So there is a bucket that we can use specifically for these resources, and then we wouldn't necessarily get if we're not using the OER resources. And we did use this for our Bluebonnet Math this year, so we did not need to use local funds or anything of that nature. And we do have some samples over here, so if you guys want to peruse at your leisure later, you can look through the samples and ask questions as you see fit. But any questions so far on what we've presented?
Yes, ma'am. Early on in the presentation, it talked about pages under the number something. Number 9, page 9. Strong emphasis on handwriting and cursive development. Is that a change? Are we going back to cursive?
I don't know that
I'm all
it's.
for it. That's a long story.
I mean, I agree. There's plenty of students that don't know how to sign their name, but that is one of the things that we did notice in the literature that we've read too. So yes, handwriting is a part of it, which I think will greatly benefit our students. I think a lot of times, especially with our tests being online, they're taking assessments digitally. Handwriting, like you said, has become a lost art.
All right, on the following page, it talks about student activity book consumables. And I'm assuming this ties into the finance part at the end. I don't know what OER means.
So OER is Open Education Resources, and the resources are available digitally, but it would just be a PDF version of it. So of course, we have access to it. We can just print out pages and pages
And that's what
and
I was
pages.
going to ask about on here, the student activity books that are consumable, they are available digitally also, correct?
Yes, I believe so. So there's certain vendors that you can go with. So for example, I'll give you an example of the Bluebonnet Math. We went with the Great Minds vendor that gave us the Bluebonnet materials, and we had some additional content because we chose that vendor. They weren't necessarily more expensive, but we were able to go with Great Minds instead of ESC, whoever it was. It wasn't ESC2, I forget. But one of them had the digital content. So because of the vendor we chose, we got some additional content.
Page 13, where the whole knowledge map is kind of spread out there. Don Quixote, Midsummer Night's Dream, we're doing Cervantes and Shakespeare in 5th grade?
So there is some high rigor content in here. That is certainly something that we've heard. So again, this is why we are bringing you this information early in the process so that we can have these discussions and make sure we're all on the same page with what our students are learning. And then I know Dr. Martinez has mentioned, getting some input from the community as well, so that we can, move forward with whatever we decide.
Yeah, I'm all for it, but it's aggressive if you ask me.
Yes, sir. It is high quality instructional material, and that is what Texas stands by. So if we continue to teach our students at grade level with high rigor grade level content, they're going to rise to the occasion.
Page 16 talks about, who is 16? No, I'm sorry, 15. The family support. What happens to the student that doesn't have family support? How
So,
do we fill those gaps?
well, I mean, they will still be sent home. I mean, a lot of our students have somebody, and that is one of our goals in general. This is through K through 5. One of our goals with the ACE grant is to improve our family and community engagement, and actually is a requirement of that ACE grant. So in general, this aligns with our school improvement initiatives.
Page, I believe it was 17, talks about ready-to-use lesson plans. Are these like on a daily basis that the whole year is kind of scheduled out?
Yes, so they will have a scope and sequence, they will have a YAG, they will have what they're doing every single day. So they don't need to search around and find content that's going to be at the level that their students need, but they're going to focus on how they're going to teach it. So that's why we've moved from lesson planning to internalization. So the plan is there, what you're teaching is there, but you're going to internalize that so that you understand it fully, and I'm able to explain it to every single student that's sitting in front of me.
So if we look at the year, and this kind of goes back to the discussion we were having a little earlier, if we look at the year as a whole, it doesn't end April with testing. There are lesson plans for those last 3 weeks, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, that's all I have.
So I actually have a question. So I guess just for the record, Bluebonnet is what TEA recommends.
Yes, sir. This is their, so they have these instructional material review, I forget what the A stands for. But these instructional review committees go through, they pick their very best curriculum that's going to cover all of the TEKS 100%. And TEA is not recommending any curriculum that's not 100% aligned. So this is the one that is 100% aligned to the TEKS.
So,
And
our remedial lessons are built into this for kids, for students that are falling behind.
Say again? Remedial?
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously the purpose is to get our kids on grade level with grade level content in front of them. We do have the foundational skills units that are for K through 3. So that's going to build those foundations. And again, they're 2 separate books and 2 separate things that the students will be going through with phonics and things of that nature on the foundational skills. As far as bringing in those remedial materials, there's differentiation and supports and scaffolds, but we're not bringing in lower level content for the students.
Okay, thank you.
you talk about in the summer, the lessons that will help that are built in the curriculum
The
for
ADSI.
the summertime, for the summer school.
So the ADSI days that we've been talking about and discussing in workshops, there's going to be material that we can use for those days in particular. And they have a whole module these are the things you are supposed to do during those days, because that's also one of the things that school districts are moving towards. And obviously with the grants, it makes sense to do the ADSI days as opposed to a traditional summer school. But that material is going to be there for the teachers.
And I appreciate, the board questions, particularly to the fact that our curriculum doesn't end when the students take the STAR test. And so our students and our teachers have the ability and the opportunity to continue learning after the test. Because remember, there's also next year, and we consider what it's called the summer learning cliff during the summertime, right? So every opportunity that we can have to impact the learning our students have is critical. And so there's no waste of time. We teach the curriculum because not only are we assessed on the curriculum that we're teaching for from the beginning until April, May, when the testing happens, but what they learn after that are foundational skills and building blocks that they need for the next grade level. So it's imperative that we teach the entire curriculum that the students are supposed to learn at each grade.
Any additional questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Flowers, and Dr. Himmelhorn, appreciate it. Moving on to item 5C, Senate Bill 11, daily prayer time. Ms. Aida Nava. Ada.
Is it this one?
You can just open it and it's gotta be this, the next one. Good evening, Board President Reese, board members, and Dr. Martinez. The first item that we're going to be looking at is Senate Bill 11, the daily prayer. This comes from the 89th legislative session, and it's added to the Texas Education Code, section 250823, which allows school boards to designate a time each school day at every campus for students and employees to pray and read the Bible or other religious texts. The bill requires that within 6 months of the effective date, which is March the 1st of 2026, that each district board must take a record vote either to establish the daily prayer time and reading of religious texts by adopting the resolution set out in the new statute, or to decline the established daily prayer time. Is there any questions regarding that piece?
I have a couple of questions. Are we getting a lot of guidance from the state as far as the reading of religious texts?
So we are getting a guidance through the act regarding what the resolution will look like. And so they do have some guidelines for us, and those are going to be determined once the board at the second reading decides if we are going to adopt that resolution or if we're not going to as a district.
Is that resolution already available?
There are samples that are out there, but I can share some of the items that must be in the resolution and the admin regs that must go with it. So of course it would be consent for the student to engage in that period of time, acknowledging that they have the choice to participate or not, and the express waiver of the personal right to bring claim. So meaning that they couldn't come back and sue the district for y'all voting on that resolution, like if they did not want to participate.
So this designated time, this time has to be done within the school day itself.
Yes, sir.
Maybe I didn't make myself clear. Did it specify, is it open to all religions?
Yes, sir.
It's an individual private time kind of, isn't it?
Yes,
It's
sir.
not like
It is
class led or anything.
No, sir.
Okay.
So it's just time set aside that if a student wishes to read religious text or pray,
Yes, sir.
they certainly can.
Yes, sir.
And there is no, does it give any guidance for how long it has to be? I mean, is it like 5 minutes or 10 minutes?
What I have read, I have not found the limit, the amount of time that is done. So I'm continuing to research that. I also want to reach out to other districts to see what they have adopted and decided on.
Could it be like something like moment of silence? Like,
That's already embedded in our policy. We already do that.
do that?
This is separate and this is specifically to religious text.
In my opinion, a lot of it's gonna come down to exactly what this resolution says under the TEC code. Mr. Maddox, have you reviewed any of that language?
No, sir, it's too new.
We've got,
It just came out.
we've got until March 1st. So that means the January meeting or the February meeting, where we've got to vote either up or down.
To create the resolution, yes, sir.
And I agree that it's pretty new. On the one hand, I think it's a great idea in theory. I think the application of it is somewhat difficult. And real frankly, with the position that this district is in, on the hand, we need every prayer we can get, but on the other hand, we need every minute of instructional time that we have also. So I'm curious to see the resolution.
I mean, right now, if you look out on any social media platform, even if the big TV channels decide to show it, it's a gigantic movement right now. You're looking at A&M, you're looking at Baylor, you're looking at all of these big colleges that are actually doing, I mean, not during class time, but it's a big movement as far as religion coming back right now. It's a huge movement. You see it, you saw it last night. We watched the game, what the quarterback was saying, and then what the college kids are saying after games. So it's big, it's coming back, and it's not being censored.
Any other questions?
I did a quick research on some districts' actions regarding the SB 11 for the prayer. And districts like Denton, for example, Live ISD, and other districts have declined to adopt a prayer period policy. They have stated that the kind of policy that will set aside dedicated time during the school day for prayer or religious studies under SB 11. They said the board concluded that existing state and federal law already protects students' rights to voluntarily pray, read religious texts, and express religious viewpoints during the school day. They determined that adopting a specific SB 11 policy could limit rather than expand those freedoms, for example, by placing constraints on when and where students could pray, and then the policy's procedural requirements such as signed consent forms and designated times and places were seen as potentially restrictive relative to current rights. And so that's just some examples, but we can bring more information. Again, this is new and it hasn't been entertained or adopted by many districts because everybody's in the process of researching, but we can do more findings for next board meeting and present it for your consideration.
I have yet to find a district that did adopt it. So that's what I was waiting, like Dr. Martinez said, it's very new.
Thank you, Ms. Nava.
Yes, sir.
We now move on to item 5D, localized policy update. Also, Ms. Nava.
So this is the update 126. It is a bit extensive. There are 24 changes and 4 new policies. And this is the first reading of Update 126. It includes revisions to the legal framework based almost exclusive on legislation from the 89th regular legislative session. Unless otherwise noted, references to legislative bills throughout these explanatory notes refer to Senate bills, House bills, or House concurrent resolutions from the 89th regular legislative session. Some of the areas that we'll be looking at and consider for changes are going to fall under board meetings, public participation, contracted services, criminal history, buildings, grounds, and equipment management, flag displays, technology resources, cybersecurity, facility standards, safety and security, facility construction, employment requirements and restrictions, conflict of interest, compensation and benefits, leaves and absences, term contracts, non-renewal, personnel management relations, employee complaints, grievances, employee standards of conduct, instructional resources, instructional materials, special education, video, audio monitoring, academic achievement, grading, progress reports to parents, wellness and health services, medical treatment, student welfare, crisis intervention, student welfare, student safety, student welfare, child abuse and neglect, student rights and responsibilities, student and parent complaints, grievances, student discipline, public complaints, community relations, conduct on school premises. And we'll be reviewing new local policies offered for consideration that address the following: technology resources, artificial intelligence, instructional arrangements, lesson plans, parents' rights and responsibilities, attendance release time. In looking at the first one under BE, local board meetings, the changes for this policy are language under meeting time and place to state 3 days rather than the 72 hours before the meeting and held outside of the typical workday. Under deadline, it states, agenda items be submitted 10 calendar days before a meeting to provide districts sufficient time to compile items and post agenda by statutory deadline. Also, the language at voting is changed to record vote and has been revised to read to show of hands or roll call voting. And under the subtopic minutes, it has been removed because it's not required to be stated separately since it's already under the CPC policy.
Can we go through these one by one and stop and discuss?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I had issues with the very first line. I'm actually gonna earn your money today.
Right.
Board meetings shall be held during a time that is outside of typical work hours, which I have no problem with. This is a local policy too. And so my question is gonna be exactly how far did the legislature go here? Because we have always made a conscious effort, at least in the last 5 to 6 years, to not have meetings anytime other than in the evening, mostly for public participation. But there is, on occasion, the need for a special meeting. It doesn't rise to the level of emergency meeting, but there have been times when, in order to get a quorum to meet a deadline, we have had to have a very limited meeting at noon or at 3 o'clock or at something in order to have something approved for either contract renewals, or sometimes it's been to meet a deadline for submission of something or another. The way it's worded does not allow for that, and it uses the word shall. And I'm wondering if we can either adjust that to say regular board meetings or change shall to will usually. And I guess what I'm looking for some guidance here. I'm not familiar with the specific Senate Bill 12 to know whether this is prohibited or not, but we all know that we have had occasion that we had to have, again, not an emergency meeting, that's allowed, but it's very, very limited for what an emergency meeting is. But we have had very limited agenda special meetings when it became absolutely necessary. That's the first one. The second one I have is, can we walk through the 3 business days? If we have a meeting on Tuesday at 5:30, does Tuesday count as a business day?
That is counted as a third day, I believe, right, Mr. Maddox?
And so where I'm going here is, you've obviously got Monday, you've obviously got Friday, but if you were to say that it was required by Thursday at 5:30, well, 5:30 on Thursday is no longer a business day, so has anybody worked through the math to know whether this is required to be posted on Wednesday or Thursday?
So in looking at it, I think what they're intending here is, because before it used to say 72 hours and that was a specific time frame. I think by changing the wording to a more general statement as third day, I think they're giving us that flexibility, but I can definitely follow up with TASB and with Mr. Maddox to see what exactly do they mean by that.
Because when your meeting falls outside of the regular business hours, which it's requiring, then was that day a business day?
Does it
I
count?
don't know.
Yes, I see what you see.
Right, so we can't shortchange, it's not a loophole to the original rule of 72 hours.
Right.
So we can't backtrack under 72 hours. Typically, the day of posting is 0, so that 3 complete business days between. But I'll confirm.
So that would be, walk us back from Tuesday. Would it be Thursday? Because, okay, Thursday at what time?
5:30. I would say 5:30.
But then Thursday is no longer a business day at
I do have
5:30.
Friday,
You have Friday, Monday.
and then Tuesday.
Do you count Tuesday if that's the day of your meeting? I don't know.
It's fine.
Tuesday after business hours, so you can't shortchange our 72 business hours.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume that would be all right, but I just think it's a technicality that we need to make sure that we don't have an issue. That's all I had on this one.
BED, local board meeting and public participation. The changes in this policy meet Senate Bill 12 regarding public comments occur at the beginning of board meetings, as well as changing to meeting management for time allowed. And that allows the presiding officer, which would be, of course, our board president, that he can adjust the time allotted when large number of individuals are wishing to speak during that specific board meeting. And we currently already do this. Any questions on BED? CJ Local Contracted Services now states that contractors may not engage in or assign instructional activities prohibited by law to include prohibition of DEI violations resulted in, and that could result in a termination in contract. So they cannot be assigning any instructional activities or discussing regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion prohibited by law.
I do have a question.
Peter,
Yes, sir.
as it's stated in the actual policy at the end, the contract is subject to termination if the district contractor intentionally or knowingly engages in diversity, equity, and inclusion duties. What does that mean? I mean, I get where we're going, knowing the conservative nature of our state legislature. I know that this is a nasty word and they want it done away with. But if you've got a company out there, say you have an architect or something that in their business chooses for their business model to have DEI components, how does that affect, I mean, by the reading of this language, it's basically saying we can't do business with them. And that just seems draconian to me.
The other concerns that I have, Mr. Kufal, is a violation of policy. In my opinion, would be a hard-pressed argument to terminate a separate standing written agreement for services. In other words, unless we lifted this language and made it part of our termination clause in our contracts, which we can do from now on, but simply violating a local policy, well, I think would be a hard sell in the state or federal court for an outright termination. The contract is otherwise valid. So I do have a couple of concerns. as well.
I think it's a pendulum swing, and I think it will swing back at some point. And I'm not gonna hold up the stuff, but I just think it's good.
It continues throughout in other policies. We'll see
I
it.
saw it.
My apologies. CJA, Contracted Services, Criminal History. The subtopic has changed background checks and reporting requirements to, and it was previously criminal history. So now it's background checks and required reporting. That's the only change there, just the titling of that subtopic. Any questions on CJA? CLE, buildings, grounds, and equipment management. This is regarding the flag displays. Now it's just changed to required displays, the subtopic. The rules are still the same. It's just now saying instead of flag displays, we're going to call it required displays. Any questions on CLE? CQB local revisions comply with House Bill 150. It moves training requirements from the Department of Information Resources to now the Texas Cyber Command and includes details about notifications for cybersecurity. Those notifications, it guides us and tells us what types of notifications that we will have to send, which would be written notice, email, any conspicuous postings on our district website, and of course, publications via broadcast media. Any questions on CBQ? CSA local added sections regarding designation and use of private spaces. The superintendent will designate spaces in accordance with the law and develop regulations for compliance. These private spaces are defined as designated in each multi-occupancy private space for use only by an individual of one sex.
You're gonna have to explain that to me. My big question here is, for what? What are these private spaces used for?
So that would be like a mother's,
I get
Yes,
that, I
and-
understand that, and that's been part of the law for a while.
yes.
But is this saying that every employee must be allocated some private space?
I believe that it's more towards identifying those areas and making sure that we have the proper posting. So if it's a female restroom, that it is indicated as a female restroom. If it is a mother's room, it's indicated for that. If it's a family restroom, that it's indicated for that, and that we make sure that they are used according to those postings.
So for, as far as you know, and from what you've read, this has to do with mother's rooms and restrooms, and that's.
Yes, and we have already gone through with our maintenance and operations to make sure that we're already in compliance with that, and we are.
I'm good.
Any other questions? CV local, under subtopic construction contracts, it now reflects the language of the legal framework rather than the specified dollar amount. Under the project administration headline, or designee language is removed since the superintendent's authority is established under BJA. And this again is regarding the change from the 50,000 threshold to the 100,000 threshold. And I believe that Dr. Martinez and I spoke about this earlier regarding some admin regulations that she would like to put in place because it is her intent to continue to share that amount regardless if it's the 100,000, if she would like to continue.
Yeah, if I may add, this is a shift, right? From 50,000 to 100,000. So when I discussed with the team in the spirit of transparency, even though these items now don't require board approval, I will still continue to bring them for your information so that you are aware of those items that might be within that threshold. And then once you feel comfortable or you want me to cease to do so, then we can go forward with a different plan. But in the spirit of transparency and to make an easy transition, I'd rather be, make sure that you're informed and work on it.
I agree, but while we're looking at this, the only numbers specified in the actual amended policy are 25,000. And it has to do with construction contracts, and change orders. Is that too low? And while we're changing this, should we be changing it?
So the law now states that it is going from the $50,000 threshold to the $100,000 that will require board approval.
But we, through our local policy, have a level of 25,000. And that can be found on our policies, 255. And I'm just saying that if we're, and I remember when we did it, and I remember why we did it. But it just, 25,000 just seems low to me for it.
I know that it's also recommended that specifics like that, if I'm correct, Mr. Maddox, that those can be done through admin regulations versus adopting a policy so that we're closer to the legal framework of how it's being asked for us to look at.
So
Exactly.
for a couple of things. So the superintendent's spending authority is different than what's addressed in this policy. So this is not $100,000 of authority before seeking board approval. This is $100,000 before the district is required to competitively bid out a contract. So the superintendent's spending authority, I do believe, is at $25,000 in our local policy. Most surrounding districts, perhaps not most, but many surrounding districts utilize the old max for procurement, which was $50,000. So it is somewhat low for some districts around here to get $25,000. But this policy specifically addresses some areas of concern, which are construction, which traditionally there's lots of money issues within construction and insurances, and establishes that your policy will track whatever the law is in terms of procurement, which we have to follow anyway. We can't change that. So if we did want to increase the superintendent's spending authority, that's actually located in a different policy than this one.
Yeah, but this one, even though we had 50, it's now being changed to, it does say 100, it says the competitive purchasing threshold established in law, which would be 100. But then in the very next paragraph, we limit that to 25,000. And then we limit to 25,000 on change orders further on down. And I'm just saying, I don't think that that's necessary. And I would like to, and as long as we're changing, why not increase that to at least 50 or the recommended statutory limit of 100?
And these are on the other policies that you're referencing, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
on CD. That's just my,
The current spending authority of the superintendent is at 50,000.
we're mixing apples and oranges. This is policy CD, which has to do with construction contracts. And the law has changed to say the superintendent, the competitive purchasing threshold is now at 100,000. We have limited that further through local policy down to 25,000 to where the superintendent has to get board approval. And I'm just saying we're having to change this policy to meet with the law anyway. And I just think that the 25,000 is low, and then it should be increased to at least 50,000, if not higher. In my opinion, we move on.
Any other questions? DEC local now includes new definitions for the daily rate of pay and how it should be computed. And that is that the daily rate, the salary will be divided by the number of contracted days. Under the FMLA section, it defines the concurrent use of paid leave as well as the exemption for an absence related to pregnancy. And that just allows the teacher stating that they have to notify their appropriate administrator if they choose to use their leave concurrently with FMLA with regards to pregnancy, birth, or adoption of a child.
Okay, I've got a question here.
Yes, sir.
We're on DBD, correct?
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped a whole page. I'm sorry, my apologies. My apologies. This DBD local is a new section titled, there's a new section titled Personnel Services Performed by an Administrator, and includes the language of prohibited financial benefits. So this is talking about an administrator now. Previously, it only would talk about a superintendent. Now it's talking about an administrator that is defined as a person with significant administrative duties relating to the operations of a district, operations of a program, campus, or other subdivision of the district. So what it's saying is that they cannot profit without board approval if they're going to do something outside as a contracted service.
Okay.
So they're
I'm with you. But then it says an administrator other than a superintendent or an assistant superintendent who wishes to seek board approval to perform personal services permitted by law shall submit that request to the superintendent in accordance with administrative regulations. Got it? Not a problem. But what does the superintendent and the assistant superintendent do?
The superintendent's ability to work outside of his or her contract is governed by their specific contract. It's almost always addressed in their contract adopted by the board. I do share your concern about assistant superintendent. That's
Because we had that
oddly
issue.
excluded.
We had that issue here where there was a college course involved. So I just think we need to get a little clarity there.
and I can contact HASB on that one as well as for the assistant superintendent piece. Now DEC local leaves and absences. Again, this is regarding the employee having to let the administrator know if they want to have concurrent use of that leave if they go on FMLA for those specific reasons. Was there any questions on this policy? DFBB. Under reasons for non-renewal of a term contract section, it adds a language to clarify performing essential functions of the job, as well as 2 new reasons for non-renewal of a contract, and that is when an employee engages or assigns another individual instruction, guidance, activities, or programming prohibited by law, and engages in or assigns another individual DEI duties prohibited by law. Again, this is similar to
And
the
I
other.
get this. I get this on our employees, you know, that's not a problem. Problems with the contract.
Yes, sir. Any questions on DFBB? DGBA local is an extensive revision. It is regarding the employee complaints. It includes revisions prompted, of course, by Senate Bill 12. It now includes information regarding online access to the policy. Edits under guiding principles include the name change now to informal process and formal processes. There's been a rearrangement of subtopics to better align subject matter to the grievance process. There are new subtopics, options to continue the informal process, which describes the encouragement of an informal resolution even after initiating that formal process. There's a lot of change in wording under grievance conferences and hearings throughout. Under the filing subtopic word change from 3 days to 3 business days. Under notice of complaint, it states that now the district employee against whom a complaint has been filed shall be provided notice and given sufficient opportunity to submit a written response. At levels 1 and 2, response now referred to as a decision, and updated instructions for subtopics under cost incurred, record, remand, assignment of hearing officers, and investigation. Edits to the complaint levels, including that decision within 20 days of the hearing, and at level 2, 20 days from the date of the level decision. Appeal submission it went from 10 to 20 days. And if a level 3 is filed, the board shall hold a meeting to discuss the complaint no later than 60 calendar days after the level 2 decision was made. Under the subtopic level 3, it now states, unless the board delegates a committee in accordance with the law, the board shall hear the appeal of the level 2 decision, as well as providing at least 5 business days before the level 3. They should provide those 5 days to the employee and any information that they intend to rely on that's not contained in the record. And it says that they will have to make a decision within 30 days of that meeting. Those are for the level 3s.
Okay. We've got this one, and we've got several others that will be going through dealing with grievances. In my opinion, Mr. Maddox, we lean very heavily on you in terms of grievance procedures. So frankly, I don't want to know what the procedures are. I'm going to lean on you to tell me that we're either legal or we're not. I will say in this one section, specifically on page 271, there is a new addition that I think every board member needs to read closely because it prohibits certain communications between employees and board members when there has been a grievance filed. And that's a new addition that has always been kind of known and understood, but not committed to writing.
Sir, I'll piggyback on that. A lot of these changes are actually matters of practice by school board council and boards across the state anyway. So it's really taking a lot of the traditional procedures that we would implement as a matter of fairness regardless and codifying them into policy. So it looks like a lot of changes. It is a lot of changes, but a lot of this has been performed by you as a board and many others for a long time now.
Any other questions? Under DH Local, employee standards of conduct include changes under Senate Bill 706 regarding reciprocity with a handgun license from other states. So they changed that so that it doesn't just say Texas now, it says from another state. 3 sections were added: prohibited classroom instruction or activities, prohibited diversity, equity, and inclusion duties, and social transitioning. This inclusion is pursuant to Senate Bill 12. Under new requirements of Senate Bill 571 regarding notice of suspected misconduct by an educator, that word educator was removed, and it now says that it's a district employee or a person acting as a service provider for the district. Any questions on DH Local? EFA Local will now include sections on parent requests for instructional material review in accordance with Senate Bill 12. And this is one of the areas where the administrative will develop regulations to ensure that the parent or guardians can request a review of instructional materials individually or through a petition process with other parents. Any questions on EFA? Recommended revisions on EHBAF Local include updated language and updates on the timeframe for reporting suspected misconduct or child abuse from 48 to 24 hours as required by Senate Bill 571. So we are now moving from a 48-hour reporting time to a 24. Any questions on this one? Revisions for EIA local reflect that Senate Bill 12 requirement that each parent of a student be offered the opportunity for at least 2 in-person conferences per year. Under section academic dishonesty, it indicates that the use of artificial intelligence without permission constitutes academic dishonesty. Any questions on EIA? A revision under FFAC local has been made due to Senate Bill 920 now allows school employees, including nurses, to administer non-prescription medication provided by the parent in accordance with legal requirements. This is something that I know a lot of people have been waiting on. Are there any questions on this one? Okay. FBB local requirement under House Bill 2 includes a new section, notification to teaching staff of threat, which requires notice of a threat against a campus be given to teaching staff, and it includes teacher aides who may be directly affected by the threat. And it includes that the superintendent shall develop administrative regulations to ensure that the required notice is provided to the teaching staff.
Huge questions here.
Yes, sir.
In practicality, how does this happen? I mean, we've got a threat going on. We've got an active shooter. Everybody on that campus has protocol that they're supposed to be following at that point in time.
Yes.
And now we're required to notify every single teacher, while we should be following the protocol of whatever it is to prevent that. And I get it, it says as soon as safe and practical.
Yes, sir.
Are there code words, colors, things like that that can be used to just basically say, and again, you don't want somebody in an app building not being aware that something's going on. But the reality is, and we've been beat up in the past, not so much from employees, but by, the public in general, well, they should have put out a robocall. They're dealing with a crisis here. And we've got to stop and notify people that there's a crisis.
Yes.
How I get it in theory, but in the real world, how does this play out?
Mr. Maddox.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Mr. Kufal. So this policy was not specifically meant to be a crisis in the moment notification system policy. So our crisis in the moment policies and procedures to keep students and staff safe during imminent crisis are somewhat different. This is more, and as you can see here, it's even targeted threats made through social media. This is more attempting to address those known by upper administration, not known by other campus staff threats that were received perhaps after hours, the called in bomb threat, if you will, where there's time to analyze this, make determinations as to whether or not we believe it's credible, whether or not we believe the campus should be closed, police call, that sort of thing, which are all guided by their policies, procedures, and law in the analysis. But this is more about letting staff know that traditionally wouldn't have been in the loop that there was such a threat involved. Does that make sense?
Okay, so there's no time sensitivity necessary.
Not really. That's where it starts off as soon as safe and practical, which means as soon as we have a real time and method in which we can notify lower staff, and I'm using the word lower staff, but other staff that wouldn't have been perhaps in the know to begin with.
And just for the board information, what I will do is I will ask Mr. Segovia, who leads our safety, department, and he works with us on developing the emergency protocols that we're required to submit to the states. And we recently submitted them that to do a short presentation for you and for the benefit of the community on what are those plans that are put in place to include communication when different situations happen based on the threat level. And so that way we're all informed about that.
So just to reiterate, what this would likely look like in practice is campus received a threat, protocol and law was put in place and implemented. The campus determined it wasn't credible, decided to continue with school. And then at that point where it's safe and practical, we notify the rest of campus staff of that analysis.
FF Local includes an added section regarding notification to parent of a student with whom an employee or service provider is alleged to engage in misconduct to no later than 1 business day. So that notification now has to be done within 1 business day. Any questions on this? In accordance with Senate Bill 571, FGG Local now states that reports of abuse and neglect must be submitted within 24 hours of learning the facts giving rise to the suspicion of abuse or neglect. Under subsection making a report, it has been modified now to state, they have removed the wording, and it now states that it's a law enforcement agency. Before it said state and local, now they just left the law enforcement agency. Any questions on this policy? F and G, which deals with the students' rights, responsibilities, student and parent complaints and grievances. This is the similar as the DGBA one, the revisions that reflect under Senate Bill 12. The changes are pretty much the same, except with the timeframes here, which are now going from 10 to 20 days of appeal notice. And it is the same for the 30 days after the level 3. So it went from the 10 to 20 days. Any questions on this one? And it will be similar for the public complaint area in a little while as well. FO Local policy had 2 minor edits. Under video and audit monitoring, a change in the word from shall to may be used, and they added when a video recording equipment is in use. So just some minor word changes there. Any questions on FO? GF, public complaints, there are again the same substantial changes that were made. Some include the removal of subtopics, again, guiding principles and days. The information guidance of these subtopics have been embedded within the new subtopics. Complaint levels, new subtopics include filing deadlines, which states that a public member who engaged in the informal process in an attempt to resolve a complaint has not reached a resolution during this informal process. The individual must file a complaint within 15 business days of the date of the individual first knew or with reasonable diligence should have known or action given rise of the complaint or grievance. The hearing must be held with the complainant within 10 calendar days after the receipt, and a decision should be provided to the complainant within 20 calendar days. Appeals may be filed within the 20 calendar day of the decision, and at level 3, that hold a meeting to discuss the complainant no later than the 60th calendar day of the date of which the level 2 decision was made, and a decision shall be made no later than 30 days after the board meeting. I'm sorry, my throat is getting very dry. Under subtopic deadline extensions, it states all deadlines shall be strictly followed unless otherwise required by law or modified by mutual consent. Are there any questions in this area as well? Thank you. Any questions? And we will be updating all of the exhibits to reflect these changes as well. GK, Local Community Relations Conduct on School Premises. This is a revision due to Senate Bill 706 under subtopic prohibitions, exceptions, changes to the language have been made under the statement, no violation of this policy occurs when they removed the word a Texas and they added an individual who holds a handgun license. So they just removed a Texas to now just an individual. Any questions on GKA? So now we're going to look at some local policies that are being asked of the school districts to now include. The legal policy has been in existence in these areas, but now they're asking us to include local policies. The first one is CQD, Technology Resources, Artificial Intelligence. This new recommended policy falls under the Technology Resources Framework. House Bill 150 and House Bill 1500 established that the board delegates to the superintendent the authority to determine the artificial intelligence training program to be used in the district, verify and report compliance with training requirements in accordance with the guidance from the Department of Information Resources, and remove access to the district's computer systems and databases for non-compliance with the training requirements. This policy also states that districts will complete audits to ensure compliance with AI trainings. Under the subtopic use in district, it gives employees and students permission to explore AI and implement its use in and out of the classroom in accordance with the policy and administrative regulations. The use of AI shall only be used as a support tool to enhance student outcomes and shall never take the place of a teacher and student decision-making. It continues to state that a student shall only use AI tools with teacher permission and shall be expected to produce original work and properly credit sources. The use of AI tools to deceptively harm, bully, or harass others shall be disciplined in accordance to the Student Code of Conduct and Policy. Any questions?
I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
Here. Is, because this is brand new, it talks about, you just read that use of AI in and out of the classroom in accordance with policy and administrative regulations. Do those administrative regulations exist? Okay.
We'll have to develop those once the board approves at the second reading. Yes, sir.
Thank God it's y'all and not me.
Okay, another new policy, again, these exist already in the legal framework. EEP Local Instructional Arrangements Lesson Plan. This new policy includes recommended language from Senate Bill 12 and falls under the Instructional Arrangement Legal Framework. The policy requires that prior to each semester, each teacher shall provide a copy of the teacher's instructional plan or course syllabus for each class for which the teacher provides instruction. This information will be provided to the district administrator and the parent of each student enrolled in the teacher's class. The superintendent shall develop administrative procedures for the posting of the plan and course syllabi offered in the district on the district's website. Any questions on this one? FA Local Parents' Rights and Responsibilities. The policy meets the Senate Bill 12 requirement to establish parent portal and falls under the Parents' Rights and Responsibility. It states that the district shall establish a parent portal on the district's website through which parents may submit comments to campus administrators, district administrators, and the board. The superintendent shall develop administrative regulations related to the portal, including placement on the district or campus websites, and how campus or district administrators are to address comments received through the parent portal. Any questions on this policy? I know it's a lot of them. And our last one, FEF local attendance release time. Senate Bill 1049 reflects the requirements around release time courses. In this section, release time course means a course in religious instruction offered by a private entity. It states that the school principal can give permission for the student to be released for the release time course. Requirements to allow permission for a student to attend a release time course are established under this policy as well. And these, there are 5 different ones: parent written consent, private entity offering the release time course maintains attendance records and makes them available to the district. The third is the private entity or parent or guardian or student assumes responsibility for transportation, including transportation for a student with a disability to and from the location. The fourth would be that the private entity assumes liability for the student enrolled in the release time course while under their care. And the fifth, the student is responsible for any schoolwork or assignments issued during the student's absence from the district for this release time course. The district is prohibited from using district funds to facilitate the student attending the release time course. The private entity shall be prohibited from offering the release time course on district property unless they follow policy GKD, and the district shall not interfere with the parent's or guardian's ability to request or access release time course for a student. So again, this is a release time course means that they're going to a private entity for religious instruction outside of the district. Any questions on FEF? And again, if anybody has any questions.
I was looking on one more thing.
Can I drink a little water?
Hey, thank you, Ms. Nell.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, so now we move on to item number 6. Kingsville ISD Board of Trustees will now conduct a special meeting. The time is 7:03 p.m. So we start with item 6A, communication from administration. Superintendent update, Dr. Martinez.
Good evening, Board President and board members and members of the public. Thank you for being here. As you can see, we have been presenting to you different components of our school improvement plan, or components of that school improvement plan that will ultimately lead us towards improving student outcomes in Kingsville ISD. At the next board meeting on the 21st of January, we will present our draft plan of school improvement, and we're very excited about that. We're working on it and ensuring that we have all the data that we need to have to make sound decisions. At the same time, we are conducting community forums. We already had one in December, on the 17th, I believe, of December. And it was well attended. Some of you also had the opportunity to attend that community forum. We have the second community forum tomorrow at 5:30 here in this room. And we have publicized it in our website as well. We are doing presentations in different community organizations to ensure that we disseminate as much information as possible on our school improvement plan. We also will be scheduling individual sessions in each of the schools to ensure that we invite the parents of each school as well as the staff of each school to address the questions they may have. We intended to do that in the first week of January, but we didn't have all the data that we needed. And so we decided to push it a little bit further to ensure that we are giving the most accurate plan possible. At the same time, as we promised, we launched a school improvement website or page within our website that will have up-to-date information, copies of the presentations that we are giving to the community, and a live survey where all members of the community can provide feedback on the plan. And so that continues to be open to the public, and we encourage everyone to do so. We are second semester, as you know, and so we're looking at our students' performance for first semester. How do they do in terms of grades, in terms of attendance? And so we're looking at different data points to continue to make informed decisions. But in all, I will say that we're moving forward, and every day I have more questions and answers, and I'm sure the community does too. But I encourage everyone to continue to bring those questions forward, because no question is good, right? All questions are good, or not good, I should say. We invite all the questions, and if we don't have the answer right away, we will research it. It's gonna take all of us to change the story of Kingsville ISD, and we're committed to doing so. That is my report for today.
Any questions? We move on to now item 6A, number 2, teacher incentive allotment or TIA update. Ms. Tanya Williams.
Once again, good evening, Board President, Mr. Ruiz, Superintendent, Dr. Martinez, and members of the board. Yes. This evening, I will be giving you an overview of the teacher incentive allotment and what we are currently using for our local designation system. The teacher incentive allotment provides districts an accessible pathway for effective teachers to earn a higher income while remaining in the classroom. And how TIA works, the teacher incentive allotment, is there are currently 3 levels of designation. There is a 4th level that is being introduced for next year, but the current 3 levels are recognized, exemplary, and master. The stipends for TIA range anywhere between $3,000 to $30,000. Annual additional funding for each designated teacher, they are able to qualify for those stipends. It prioritizes hard-to-staff positions, so it offers greater funding for high needs and rural campuses. It is teacher-focused funding, so 90% of the TIA funds go to the teacher directly, and then the district is allowed to keep 10% of those funds. And once a teacher is designated through TIA, they do hold that designation for 5 years. The way that funding is calculated, these are the current 3 designations that are available for teachers. This bottom chart shows the 4th one that is coming about for next year. So traditionally, in the recognized area, you're looking at your top 33% of teachers. They use the base stipend. They have what they call a multiplier. And then from there, it is added, or it takes into consideration the economically disadvantaged percentage of what your campus is and whether your campus holds a rural status. And that is how the state then calculates how much funding goes for each campus and each teacher at which level. So this is a chart that shows how that is calculated. It is a 3-year approval process. Okay? We are currently in year 2. So we are currently in our data capture year, and we are collecting the data for all of our teachers. We currently have all of their boy data. Next year in October, I will submit that data to the state for it to go through the data to see if the data is valid. After that, we will then be notified if we have successfully been approved for data validation, and we will move forward to collecting stipends for our teachers for that following year.
Ms. Williams, can you explain what that data integrity should look like to ensure that we get approved for that?
Yes, ma'am. And so what the state looks like is the TIA takes into account what your data is and what your T-test is comprised of. And so right now it is weighted at 50-50. So what the state looks at is that correlating? If you're stating that Miss Williams is the master teacher, are we seeing that in her student growth and in her student data? And if those two data points do not correlate, we will not pass data validation. So the state looks at both of those pillars, the student data and student growth, and how a teacher is being evaluated in T-TEST. As stated, for TIA, we are looking at individual student growth, not achievement. So student growth is measured by the teacher's percentage of students who meet or exceed the expected growth target over the course of a single school year. And rather than using a magnitude of growth, effectiveness is measured by the impact teachers have on all students in setting those individual growth measures. So looking at the individual student and stating, this is where Tanya was when, or Mrs. Williams was when she got to you. Did she grow a whole school year's worth by the end of that year? So looking at that individual student growth. For Kingsville ISD, we are using the pre and post test. So we are using last year's STAR compared to this year's STAR for those grade levels who have those. For example, third grade, who does not have a prior test in second grade, we used a district created beginning of year test, which was a STAR release test. And they will take that data compared to how the students perform on STAR at the end of the year. Allotment funding and amounts do vary per campus per year because they take into account the base allotment, the social economic level, the what percentage is your campus in economically disadvantaged, and then your campus rural status. Currently, Kingsville ISD does not have any campuses that have that rural status. Average funding for the district, if a teacher falls under recognized, they are looking at an average of $6,224. For exemplary, $12,447. And for masters, $22,746. As stated, each campus will produce different stipends dependent upon their eco-DIS, but this is the district average of what we are looking at. Our current eligible teaching assignments and subjects for pre-K, all of them are currently eligible. The instrument that we are using is Circle, and we have already completed the boy for that. For kindergarten through second grade, it is reading only, and we are using M-Class. For 4th through 8th grade and high school, looking at reading, math, English 1, English 2, and Algebra 1. We are using prior year STAR compared to this year's STAR. For 3rd grade reading and math, we are using a district created beginning of year, which was a STAR released, and then the STAR that they will be taking at the end of the school year this year. For 5th and 8th grade science, same as the prior, district created, which was STAR released compared to end of year STAR. 8th grade, we're using that same method, and same thing for high school for biology and US history. All boy assessments have already been taken, and that data we do have. So KISD's performance data and designation eligibility. In order to be designated at the recognized level, you are looking at about your top 33% of your teachers which have a performance standard of a 3.7 or higher in their T-test, which means that 55% of their students have to have either met or exceeded their student growth target. For exemplary, for average, you're looking about your top 20 with a T-test average of a 3.9 and with 60% of their students meeting or exceeding that student growth measure. For masters, you are looking at your top 5 with an average of a 4.5 in your T-test and 70% of your students meeting or exceeding that growth target. For performance data and student growth data, student growth is reported as a percentage of each teacher's students who have met or exceeded their expected growth target. The boy assessments were administered within the first 9 weeks of school, and the end of year assessments will be administered within the last 12 weeks of school. KISD will then compare the students' end-of-year test results to the expected growth target set for the students at the beginning of the year. How will funds be spent? 90% of the TIA funds have to go back to the teachers in the form of their TIA stipend. The district keeps 10% of those funds, and we had to come up with a spending plan to submit to the state on how we are going to utilize those funds. So those funds will be utilized for the implementation of TIA and for professional development for the teachers in order for them to reach those distinctions in TIA. So now we have several different scenarios that can come about with TIA and with the funding that I will be going over with you as far as movement of teachers either within the district or if they are to move outside of the district. So scenario one, if a designated teacher leaves the district or retires prior to winter class roster verification. So they're talking about our winter PEIM submission, which happens in February. If a designated teacher leaves or retires prior to us submitting that roster, Kingsville ISD will not receive any funding for that designated teacher, and therefore no TIA compensation will be given to that teacher. Scenario two, if a designated teacher moves between campuses within Kingsville ISD during the school year, Kingsville ISD will provide TIA compensation to that teacher based on the campus that they are at during that winter PEIM submission. So wherever they are at when we submit that roster. Scenario three, if a designated teacher moves into the district prior to winter class roster verification, the designated teacher will receive TIA compensation based on the campus in where they are assigned during that winter class submission. Scenario four, if a designated teacher retires from Kingsville ISD after winter class submission, the teacher will receive funding, the funding amount allocated to them based on the TIA approved by the Texas Education Agency, and those funds must be paid prior to August 31st. Scenario five, if a TIA designated teacher leaves Kingsville ISD for reasons other than retirement after winter class submission, the teacher will not receive funding amount allocated to them based on the TIA approved by TEA. The funds will be redistributed to teachers at that campus where the teacher was employed during winter class submission. Scenario six, a designated teacher leaving the district after winter class submission due to termination will not receive their stipend. If the designated teacher is terminated prior to May, their share of the allotment will be redistributed to the campus in which they were employed. Scenario seven, Kingsville ISD cannot recommend a teacher to the state for TIA designation if they do not remain in an eligible teaching position for that following year, following the data capture year. For example, if a teacher is designated as a result of the data collected in the 25-26 school year, but the teacher moves into, let's say, an assistant principal position for the 26-27 school year, that teacher cannot be recommended for a designation because they are no longer in an eligible teaching position. Scenario eight, if a TIA designated teacher is not employed by Kingsville ISD at the time of winter class submission, then Kingsville ISD will not be responsible for paying TIA compensation to the designated teacher. In order for a teacher to receive TIA compensation, the teacher will need to work with their new Texas school district or charter school to be compensated under TIA. In this case, the amount of funds earned under TIA would follow the new district's TIA spending plan and allotments provided by the state for that particular campus based on rural and non-rural and economically disadvantaged tier status. Average funding. So the designations are valid for 5 years. Teachers can only hold one designation at a time, and designations are subject to change to a higher designation based on the district's performance criteria. Okay, a teacher cannot be recommended for a lower standard or a lower designation, and then they can only hold one designation at a time. So for example, if they are nationally board certified and then they are being recommended for a recognized designation, The state will look at which one holds a higher status, and that is the one that the state will recognize. The state will always give them that higher status in a designation. So KISD's estimated timeline. April of 2025, it was a system application. We were notified in August of 2025 that it had been approved. We are currently in our data capture year. Next October of 2026, we will submit the data for data validation. In April of 2027, we will then receive notification if our data passed or if it did not pass data validation. And then in August of 2027, funds will be paid to teachers in addition to any potential school improvement stipends that we may have. So with TIA, we are able to have a phased in approach. So for the first year, we went with what do we currently test? What do we currently submit to the state? And that is where our starting point was. So all the assessments that we are currently using and the grade levels and content areas that we are currently including in our TIA application are ones that already have a state required test to them and ones that we are already submitting data to the state for. However, we do plan on expanding and doing it in a phased in approach to then include more content areas and more teacher positions to make them more of our teachers eligible for TIA. Are there any questions from the board? Yes, sir.
All of this information and keeping track of this, is this through PEAMS? You put this information through PEAMS for the state?
So the winter fall submission is submitted through PEAMS. But as far as the data that is turned into the state, I was given a template that I have to fill out.
So you're responsible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I'm collecting all the data on all the teachers, each individual student. There is a template that has to be filled out. I then go into what is called the TIA portal, and all of that will be submitted next October. We are working very closely with our service center in ensuring that everything that we are doing is following the process of TIA. That way we are able to pass that data validation.
My last question, teachers, how are they informed about this? Do you go to the campus?
Yes, sir.
How does that happen?
Yes, sir. I have already visited all of the campuses. They called faculty meetings and we met with all of them. We provided them with the PowerPoint, answered any clarifying questions or any confusion that they may have had. So yes, sir.
Thank you.
I would like to add that the intent of the teacher incentive allowance is to ensure that we keep the best teachers in the classroom, right? There is a potentiality that teachers will make more money than administrators, which is why we discussed with you reviewing the salary scale for administrators moving forward, right? But the intent of the law and this incentive is actually to ensure that we incentivize teaching. And so before the data is submitted to TA through the portal, the TIA portal, we are going to engage with the principals of the campuses in conducting a data validation review, because the last thing we want is to submit incorrect data and then having to backtrack. So we're going to put some systems in place to ensure that we are reviewing and validating the data so teachers know, for me, they're submitting these numbers and I'm okay with those numbers. I certify that that's my data, so that we minimize, hopefully, right, or eliminate completely any conflicts that we may have.
Because this is a lot of information.
It is.
It really is, and
It is.
keep track of it so people will get, the
Correct.
teachers will. And then I do agree about administrators, of course, but I also want the board to keep in mind other staff, custodians, food service, clerical, auxiliary. You know, we're all in this together, like you say, Dr. Martinez all the time, and that includes them also.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
Any further questions from the board? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. We now move on to item 6B. I'm sorry, yeah, we have one thing.
My apologies to the board. I failed to introduce our Fine Arts Director, Mr. Porfirio Mendez, who's going to share wonderful news with us. Mr. Mendez, please come to the podium.
Good evening, everyone, board, Dr. Martinez, community, administrators, everybody, good evening. My name is Porfirio Mendez. I'm the Fine Arts Director, Head Band Director. I do want to thank Dr. Martinez for allowing me to put this on the agenda. Not really last minute. I mean, normally it takes a few days, but this just happened on Saturday. And again, before I start this entire process of stuff, you know, there's a lot of student groups and groups in our KISD community from all levels that have succeeded, have a lot of great, you know, accolades and different things. And before I explain to you the two accolades, the major ones that we have, I do want to say that we do have a lot of great things going on in KISD at every level. And these accolades that I will explain to you here in a second prove that we will not and should not be defined by a letter. That being said, there is an audition process for individual students over the course of the entire year. It takes many, many hours of the students' individual practice, work with the directors, who, by the way, didn't want to come this evening because they didn't want to cancel the rehearsals. Okay, I get it. That's a great thing. That's okay. So we did, over the audition process, we did have 6 students audition that made the all area cuts and went to the state auditions this weekend. And through that process, we ended up with 2 students, Isabella Mendez and Dakari Mazzone, that made the 4A All-State Band. And understand also, yes, it is absolutely the highest individual achievement that a student can reach on their own. They will be performing in San Antonio at the convention, where they will now audition for chairs, but Dakari is already in the top 5 of all 4A bass clarinetists, and Isabella is already in the top 35 of clarinet instrumentalists, and they will audition for placement when they get to San Antonio. There are more than 10 to 12,000 students across Texas in 4A, and they are not governed by any divisions. It's all 4A. Whether you're the biggest 4A or the smallest 4A, there is no Division 1 or Division 2. So out of these between 10 to 12,000 students, they advanced from 22 regions and placed respectively in the region bands. The top chairs in all regions advanced in one of the 5 area auditions that were held this past weekend. Only 286 of these 10 to 12,000 entries make and earn their competitive way into the All-State Band. They will meet and rehearse in San Antonio, February 11th through the 14th, and they will be presenting a concert Saturday morning at the Lila Cockrell Theater at the Henry B. Gonzalez Convention Center in downtown San Antonio. They have major composers and people of high fame in our business that will be conducting them. And it is a wonderful event, and it is something that, again, should be completely applauded for these, kiddos. I have to say, not only am I a proud band director for these students, but Isabella is my daughter. She's finally, all her brothers and sisters have been state alternates, all missed it by 1. And right now, she's the one that crossed the threshold. Her brothers and sisters are very happy, but a little salty either way. So again, and another caveat is that myself, my wife Sylvia, and Dakari's parents, Danny Carranza and Jessica Carranza, are also very proud employees of KISD. So I wanted to add that right there. But again, thank you, Dr. Martinez, for letting me come up and give this news at such a late notice and everything. And again, so we are very proud, and we will introduce them at a later date after the convention has been said and done. But again, thank you very much. And again, there are great things happening, and these students are proof pudding that we do have great things going on in this district. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mendez. We now move on to item 6B, discussion and possible action regarding the policy update 126, first reading. Do we, I guess, have a motion to accept the first reading? Not all rushed to make a motion.
I make the motion that we accept.
So motion made by Jake Bettis. Second by Joe Mireles. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries 7-0. Item 6C, discussion and possible action regarding the Gillette Middle School principal stipend. Dr. Martinez.
So what this stipend is asking the board to consider is allowing the administration to have an available stipend up to $15,000 to recruit a strong instructional leader for Gillette Middle School. We are in the middle of the school year, and it's very difficult to entice people to come, make moves at this time due to middle of the school year commitments. In addition, Gillette Middle School is one of our F3 campuses that continues to struggle in regards to leadership. We are very fortunate to have Dr. Sandoval leading the effort there, and we're very thankful for that. And we would like to ask the board to consider this hiring one-time stipend to bring a strong instructional leader to help us turn around Gillette Middle School.
So, I'll just ask one quick question. So the stipend is just for this 1 year, or that part of the salary?
Yes, it is a one-time hiring stipend. Now, as you may recall, when we did the presentation on the grants that we applied for Gillette, I should say if, but I want to change it to when we get the grants, because I'm very hopeful and prayerful that we will get those grants. We will be able to supplement the salary of the principal with the grants. And so we will continue to be able to offer a competitive salary with the help of the grants.
I have a question. You mentioned one of the reasons is because you feel that you're gonna have difficulty finding someone. Is that one of the reasons that you're wanting to pay this stipend?
Well, two reasons. The difficulty in finding somebody that will move mid-semester. Right. And then also the requirements that campus presents to us. And we can afford to hire a new principal or someone who does not have school improvement experience. And so if we have a little bit more money, we can entice someone from another district or another area to want to take an opportunity here at Kingsville with us.
The request says not to exceed 15,000.
Correct.
We don't have to use all 15.
No, we don't.
Okay.
Of course, we will take different things into consideration, like the current salary they have and, do they have to move out of district, those kinds of things that might come in play to help entice somebody to take the position.
I agree with the stipend, but I just have a little issue of with this type of position doing that, because we have other principals that they're in the same situation they're current now. They're working for us. We need to think about them, but then, and again, I'm gonna vote yes, but my only concern is doing something like this. It's kind of treating like if we're hiring a superintendent. You understand, like you're talking about if they have to move, give them a little bit, and it just depends whether they want to use the 15,000. But that's just a little concern I have with that. I like for the administrators in certain positions, the principals, assistant principals, I would always love that for us to just be fair with everyone. And I'm not saying I'm not saying that, but just to be consistent with all the other individuals in those similar positions.
Yes.
Any more questions from the board? Do we have a motion to accept the recommendation of administration for the $15,000 potential stipend?
Make a motion to to accept the amount presented.
Second.
Motion made by Delma Salinas, second by Martin Chapa. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Moving on then to item number 7, enter into closed session. The board will enter into closed session in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code 551.071 and 551.074 to deliberate and consider the following. Item 7A, consultation with legal counsel regarding legal and personnel matters. No action will be taken until we return to open session. We are entering to closed session at 7:37 PM. We now return to open session. We can take necessary action on matters which the board may discuss in open session and upon which action may be taken. We are returning to open session at 8:59 PM. Being that there is no action that needs to be taken, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Motion made by Martin Chapa, second by Velma Salinas. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And we are adjourned at 9 PM.